If you're designing things for you in a way that you love to wear, who are other people like you and what are your shopping habits?
You're listening to Thrive by Design, business, marketing, and lifestyle strategies for your jewelry brand to flourish and thrive. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Thrive by Design podcast. I'm Tracy Matthews, your host today, and I'm very excited to be here on episode number 51. And today we're going to talk about something that everyone needs in their business, especially your jewelry business or your product-based business or whatever. And it's also one of the things that people struggle with the most. Everyone needs it the most, people struggle with it the most. Everyone needs it the most, people struggle with it the most. Everyone needs it the most, people struggle with it the most. And I say that because it sort of can feel like this sort of vicious circle at times. You know, you're doing your best to build your business, but maybe the sales aren't coming in that you'd like, or maybe your days end before you have time to really focus on sales activities or things that are going to bring revenue into your business. And it can feel frustrating. There's a lot of energy and fear and things that go into putting yourself out there and really building your brand. But there is one universal truth that I know that you'll probably all agree with me, and if you don't, I think you need to get on board, is that sales is really the lifeblood of your business. If you don't have revenue coming into your business in one way or another, and sales can come in, different avenues in different ways, then you don't really have a business. You need that revenue coming in order to build it, in order to grow it, in order to pay yourself, in order to keep that cycle of revenue going. So we hear all the time that our designers have their biggest struggles often have to do with getting enough sales in their business. I know that was something that in the very beginning of my jewelry business, when I started out in 1998, was also a struggle for me. Some of you may have heard me tell this story before, but when I was first started my jewelry business, I was doing it part-time for a while. So I sold consignment to a few stores. I didn't really have full-on wholesale stores. And I was doing these trunk shows and live events to kind of bring money into the business. It was definitely very part-time. I think my annual revenue at that time as a part-time business was maybe like $10,000 or $15,000. And I always live on coasts where they're very expensive to live. So I was living in San Francisco at the time, and now I live in New York City. That amount of money doesn't get you very far in cities like this. So I knew I needed to, generate a lot more revenue in order to live and to really build a business. And I came from a sales background. I worked in retail for most of my college career. I put myself through school. I worked in retail after. And so I felt like I had a pretty good sales foundation. But when it came to actually selling my own products, my own jewelry, and putting myself out there, I was terrified, so terrified, shivering my boots. Every time that I would have to pick up the phone, because we had to pick up the phone back in those days, because this was the 90s, the internet wasn't really as widely used as it is now, and I don't even think I had an email address when I started my business. I would be shaking in my boots, figuratively. I'm not sure that I was always wearing boots, but it felt like I was shaking in my boots. It felt like my heart was pounding out of my chest when I had to pick up the phone to reach out to a store and make a sales call. I was so terrified, but I realized that some of that terror that I was experiencing was actually really probably more a little bit of excitement, because I was really excited to get my jewelry out there. I wanted people to be wearing it. I wanted stores to buy it. I always had thought of myself that when I started my business, that my biggest dream was to become one of those designers that everyone was talking about. And it was really, really important to me to get my message and my brand and my jewelry out there and on people's necks and wearing it. So, even to this day, it's still a number one priority for me. I love designing jewelry. I love sharing my talent and art with the world. And it really is the number one thing that brings me satisfaction in the world. Maybe it competes a little bit with helping people like you guys. Mentoring and designing sometimes go hand in hand for me, because I love doing them both so much. But the point of me telling you this story is that even though I'm a pretty good salesperson now, and I came from a sales background, I still struggled with sales in the beginning. And it's something that, really takes practice to get used to. And I'm going to tell you something today, and I want you to write this down so that you can believe it for yourself, is that with a little bit of practice and identifying what's sort of going off the rails for you, in particular in your business, that anyone who is committed to building their brand. And I say committed because if you're only half in, you might not be able to do this, can grow a jewelry business that's very successful, and you can be making more than enough sales to sustain your business, sustain a paycheck for you, and to really grow your brand. But it does take work, it does take effort and initiative towards building that business and focusing on sales regularly. And so today I wanted to talk to you about some of the sales killers. So what do I mean by sales killers? So I feel like, we all have self-sabotaging behaviors. So we've identified, there are a lot of sales killers, but we've identified 5 key sales killers that we've heard from you guys, from all of you designers and makers in the Flourish and Thrive community that are really affecting their sales. And so I wanted to create an episode today about the 5 biggest sales killers out there and how to fix those sales killers, or sort of how to, counteract what's going on in your business with your sales so that you can have a more effective strategy. And I bet after listening to this episode, your mind might change a little bit about what's really going on with your sales strategy. And you might hopefully be enlightened and excited to approach sales tomorrow after you listen to the episode. So let's dive into your 5 biggest sales killers and how to fix them. Okay, so let's dive right into your 5 biggest sales killers and how to fix them. Okay, so, we've been asking you guys for a long time. We get a lot of feedback in our Diamond Insiders Club. For those of you who don't know, our Diamond Insiders Club is our membership program where we offer, monthly trainings for a membership fee. And on top of that, we give daily and weekly mentoring from Robin and myself. We talk about topics of the month, and we are really focused on helping you guys on a daily basis to maximize your impact in your business and to really help you through the struggles that you're going through and help you celebrate when things are going well. So it's a really powerful membership that we are just loving doing. But anyway, we've talked to a lot of people in the Diamond Insiders Club membership, and then we've also been sending out emails to those of you that are on our email list asking, what are your biggest sales struggles? Because we really wanted to know what the biggest struggles that you were having so that we could identify how we can help you with those struggles and help you get more sales. Because it's all that we want, Robin and I want, Robin, the sales expert over here, all that we want to see is for you to have a successful business and to watch you grow and flourish and thrive in your jewelry business and to reach your dream customers, right? And so to build this brand that's really lighting you up and, setting you up for success, and also, supporting the lifestyle and the big picture dream that you have for your life. Everyone's got a different one. Think about what yours is. Maybe it's that you want to travel and have the flexibility to, work remotely. That's one thing that's very important for me. That's a guiding principle for me in how I build my businesses. For some of you, it might be that you get to stop working at 3:00 every day so you can pick your kids up from school and make them dinner. For others of you, it might be something completely different. Maybe you want to contribute to your household income, or maybe you want to just feel the sense of freedom that comes with, it's not that it's easy, but there is a sense of freedom that comes with entrepreneurship and owning your own business. So everyone has a different driving principle about why they've started their business. And also everyone has a different issue when it comes to getting enough sales in their business. So sales killer number 1, let's talk about this one. I'm not getting enough exposure or traffic to my website or to my brand or eyeballs seeing my work. Okay, so this is a big one, right? Exposure. There's a huge factor really involved with getting enough exposure. And, it can involve a lot of different things. I know that when I was just starting out as a designer, I always say when I was just starting out, but maybe it was 2 years in business, which for some of you might not seem like just starting out, but I've been doing this for so long, probably 20 years. So it seems like I was just starting out at that time. I got one of my first press hits, and it was in a magazine called One Magazine. I was super excited about it. Shortly thereafter, maybe a year or 2 later, I got a press hit in a daily newsletter called Daily Candy. And that was really the emergence of newsletter marketing. And I remember getting that Daily Candy press hit, and I got a ton of sales just from that press hit. Now, Things have changed over the years. Daily Candy is no longer around. It was purchased by someone at a certain point, and then they ended up folding the newsletter a couple of years ago. But it was like sort of the first sort of email newsletter service that was like really promoting designers and helping to get the word out there about people and products and emerging brands that were coming on the scene. So there's a lot of different ways to get exposure. So I want to talk about some of the biggest sales killers and how to fix them. And the first one being exposure, like maybe you're not getting enough, or maybe it's that whatever you're doing to try and get exposure is not getting you the right kinds of exposure, where you're getting beyond maybe your local market or your friends and family. You know, I've heard when I first started out, I was just like a lot of you, I was selling most of my jewelry to friends and family, and that was sort of how I started to build my business, and it started to go from there. You know, exposure can come in a lot of different ways, and I really think that you need to start thinking outside of the box when it comes to exposure. So if you don't feel like you're getting enough exposure, if that's your number one sales killer, you know, I'm going to go through all these different sales killers. If exposure is your number one sales killer, I want to ask you, like, what are you doing on a daily basis to get more exposure for your jewelry brand? Because that is a sales activity that you need to be doing every day to promote your brand. And there's a lot of ways to do it. So, you know, I mentioned just a moment ago about the friends and family piece, and I wanted to mention this because, you know, a lot of us think, you know, oh, our friends and family, you know, we want to be selling to more people beyond that. My friends and family are the people who really became, you know, the guerrilla warriors for my brand. They were the ones wearing the jewelry all the time and sharing it with their friends and their coworkers and their acquaintances. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to start with that friends and family aspect and create some sort of ambassador program for them sharing your work. Because what we're trying to do is to make sales not creepy and fun. And, you know, when people are sharing something that you're excited about, I mean, think about when you run into a friend and you go out to dinner and she's wearing this beautiful lipstick color. I bet you anything you would ask her where she got the lipstick, who's it by, and where she could buy it, you know, if it was a brand that she didn't know about. So people, don't underestimate your friends and family about how they can do to help you. But I understand, like, you might want to get beyond that friends and family circle, but do ask for their help in promoting your brand. That is one way to get exposure. And exposure, you know, if you have primarily an online business, can come in a lot of different ways. And a lot of times it's not just online strategies that get you traffic and sales for an online business. It's oftentimes offline strategies that actually work to build that. So think about it out that way. Think outside the box of what you're currently doing. So some of the fixes for exposure and traffic, as I mentioned, could be this friends and family angle where they're sort of being your guerrilla warriors. Maybe it's that you're trying to convert people from your live events into online buyers and build your email list that way. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. Other types of exposure are things that I've already spoken about, like getting PR and media exposure, which is really important. PR media exposure can come in so many different ways in this day and age. So it might be in the olden days, it was all about print publications. And then like things like Daily Candy started coming out where there were daily newsletter publications. Now bloggers are so huge. And now all those print magazines have digital publications as well. So thinking outside of the box about like, where is your dream client hanging out? And, you know, what publications are they reading? And then creating a solid PR and marketing strategy so that you're, you know, focusing on these bigger media outlets. And even some of the smaller ones, you know, like mid-tier bloggers can do a lot for a brand, you know, if it's the right target market. So think of it that way. You want to make sure that you have a story that people want to share. So if you have something compelling that when someone buys your jewelry, you know, they get a little note card that shares your story, or you're sharing your story with your friends and family or your current customers, give them something that they can share with other people. You know, like, what if you make jewelry made out of like some special bead that was, you know, sourced in Africa by a fair trade worker, you know, and that helped, you know, these women who are in violent relationships get out of, you know, tragedy. Yeah, that's a great story to share. And if you have that story, you should be sharing it everywhere. Maybe your story is not as compelling. You know, like my story is really about, you know, creating jewelry that people want to wear all the time and, you know, designing things that are of heirloom quality or that turn into family heirlooms that are collected over generations. And the reason why that story is so important to me is because I have my own family heirlooms that I've designed for myself and also collected from my grandmother, from my mother, who've both passed on. And that's a really important theme and story for me. And I share that, and I attract so many customers who are like me. And I think, we're going to talk about all these sales killers, and some of this is going to become more evident later. But think about what is it about you that reflects like the same thing in your dream customer? Because sometimes it's the same thing, and that will help you sort of like isolate and pick the right places to try and get exposure from. So another way to get exposure is by connecting with influencers. You probably heard my podcast last week, episode number 50 with Jeannie Berger and Lauren Zavlinoff. Great episode all about connecting with social influencers, which is huge these days. And influencers come in all shapes and sizes. And then you could do, things on social media like Facebook ads or boosted posts, things that are getting exposure where you're building an audience where people can see it more. And then, if you want to pay, you can start getting into more advanced exposure tactics like PPC ads or the right kind of advertising on the right types of blogs, retargeting ads, what we're going to talk a little bit about later, as you start to sort of build and grow your business and you're trying to convert sales. Which brings me to killer number 2. The online activity that you're engaging in is not converting into sales. So this is really a conversion killer. You're getting maybe some traffic to your website, but the things, or maybe you're doing, all the posting that you think you should be doing, but whatever you're doing is not getting people to buy. So that's a huge killer, and it's like a super bummer when, when you feel like you're putting a lot of effort in there, and you're not getting the outcome that you want. So some of the things that, I wanted to talk about some of the things that could really help you start converting more traffic into sales. The first thing that I want to mention is that you need to have proper analytics connected to your website. So if you're doing online, you're trying to build an online business, and online activity could be for a lot of things. Maybe you're driving online to offline. Maybe you're driving it to a live event. But for these purposes, we're just going to talk about online activity on your website that you're trying to drive traffic to your website or something like that, or to your Etsy store, maybe, possibly. So the first thing is you need to have is proper analytics so that you know the sources of your traffic and realistically how much traffic is coming to your site. I was talking to a designer a couple months ago, and she's going to remain nameless, but she was saying, I'm getting traffic to my site, but no one's buying, and I don't understand why. And so I asked her, how many visitors did you have last month and all this stuff. So she came back to me with some numbers, and I think like the previous month she had 39 visitors on her website. 39 visitors is not that many eyeballs when you consider the number of people there are in the world and the attention span of people once they last on your site. So I don't know like actual percentages and stuff, but I know that the retention time of people actually hanging out on a website is not very long. You might have less than a couple of seconds to actually capture their attention. So just because you had that traffic on your site, you need to be setting your website up in a way that's actually tracking for conversions and leading people through the sales process. And it's a little bit harder to do when you're selling things like in an Etsy store because you're limited in what you can actually do on those Etsy stores. But what I would do is start to follow big brands that you like their strategies and you feel compelled to buy what they're doing, because like sort of observing what people like that are doing can really help you sort of inform your conversion strategy for online sales. So it starts with the proper analytics, as I mentioned. The next step is really like on your Etsy store. Like how are you promoting and building an audience for your Etsy store? So one of the best designers that I've ever seen do this, she only sells on Etsy as far as I know. I've Googled her a million times and all I can find is her Etsy store, is Soliloquy Jewelry. And Karen is the designer of Soliloquy Jewelry. I've chatted with her a little bit over Instagram in the past, trying to get her on the podcast. We'll see if that happens. But she has a really great strategy for building traffic to her Etsy store. She creates a huge sense of urgency because she only lists a bunch of products at one time, and she's building anticipation and excitement for people to buy during the entire time that she has no products on her Etsy site. So she'll be saying like, just 2 more weeks until these lovelies get posted on my store or whatever, and she gives like a snapshot of behind the scenes of her working on the bench. And she really creates an audience. She's a very talented designer, but she's done a really great job of creating a sense of urgency and an audience, and building, this Etsy store traffic. So if you just put up an Etsy store and expect people to show up, or a website for that matter, and expect people to show up without doing anything, that it's just not going to work. There's a lot of things that you need to do. And, I could go through a million things that you could do on your website to help convert leads. But one of the most important things is to start building an email list. It does take time. You can build an email list in multiple ways. You can have an opt-in on your website that has something more than just sign up for my newsletter. You want to give them something interesting that they can really sink their teeth into. Because if they're not ready to buy, they probably don't want to opt into your newsletter, and they probably also don't want a discount if they're not ready to buy. So think about it that way. Like, what can entice them to get them ready to buy, or get them on your list so that when they are ready to buy, that they can actually do it. So get them on your list however you can, whether it be in-person events, collect email lists, have drawings, whatever. But the most important part of the collecting the email leads is to really build a relationship with people. I think designers send out one email or something and then they expect to get sales and they don't have a consistent strategy. But you need to be consistent with this and really nurture your leads and your contacts so that they get to know you and then eventually they want to buy. There's this statistic that it takes 7 to 10 touches before a prospect can turn into a customer. So think about that. It might take several times before they actually open and read your email before they buy. And you have to nurture that list, give them a lot of value, and get people, converting on your site. So one of the other things that you need to have is an intuitive website that drives traffic the right way. Now, this is not going to be a website podcast. That's way too much to talk about in there. But you really need to tell people where to go next. And you need to be able to communicate your story and your message as soon as someone lands on your site. That can be with graphics, that can be with things like video, like I use, but something that's going to help them connect with your brand so that they want to stay and hang out and move forward. And then sometimes, that the online activity thing, we talked about the proper analytics, but it's probably tied into killer number one, that you're not getting enough traffic in the first place. So, it's sort of a catch-22 because these two are really interconnected with each other. If you don't have enough traffic, it's really a numbers game. The traffic that you have will be really hard to convert if there's not enough people on your website. The other thing that you really want to do is to make sure that you're leveraging your in-person events fully. So offline can lend to online growth, but you need to know how to leverage it in the right way. So there's so many times that I'm having conversations with people just out in my regular day that I end up converting those people into sales. And it happens, so frequently. I get a lot of traffic or a lot of sales through people just finding my site by Google searches, but a lot of my sales are really through old school methods, friends of friends talking about it, my previous customers talking about it, and having conversations with people in the real world and getting them on my site and then building that credibility and trust. So I think that's the next step, is really to be able to increase your credibility and to build trust. So you do that by, getting PR placements on your site, by getting customer testimonials, and by also, presenting, logos of different publications or blogs that you've been in. So you have some social proof so that when people are new going on your site, they're like, oh, this isn't just a ho-dunk brand new designer. She actually has raving fans who love what she's doing or he's doing. And, I really do like this necklace. Yeah, sure, I'll buy it. This person seems to think that it's the best thing that they've ever tried on or whatever. And then finally, you want to make sure that you're having a proper retargeting strategy. So for those of you who don't know much about retargeting, we're not going to go totally in depth here, but you want to put a pixel on your site so that when people land on your website and don't buy, that you can create a retargeting strategy through a company like AdRoll, or you can also do Facebook retargeting, so that when they're, surfing around the internet, that they see your ads and remember your jewelry. A lot of designers do this really well. If you see, if you're on a website, I don't know if you've ever seen this, and you see those ads later on Facebook on the little sidebar, you might have just looked at a pair of shoes on J.Crew, and then all of a sudden those shoes are on your Facebook feed, and you're like, what the heck? How did that happen? Well, that's retargeting. And you want to make sure that once you start having a budget, that you start to use tools like that to remind people, oh yeah, I like that necklace, I ran out of time and didn't end up buying, and I abandoned my cart, or I never hit the buy button, and I'm gonna go back and buy that right now. So sales killer number 3 is a big one, and something that we hear all the time, and it's not being able to find the right clients or the right sales avenues for your brands. And I'm putting these together because right clients and right sales avenues, there's a little nuance. They are a little bit different, but they're kind of the same, because I think, you have to think in terms of where your dream clients are really shopping. Are they shopping in in-person events? Are they shopping online? Are they, shopping in retail stores and boutiques? So there are a lot of nuances here, and the sales avenues and the sales and the dream clients really come at the same, intertwine in a lot of ways. And I think one of the things that people ignore a lot of times is that they're like, well, I just want to have an online business, but they, maybe they're not having a lot of success online yet. And they ignore the fact that they do really well in these in-person shows, but they're like, the in-person shows are hard. I don't necessarily want to do them or whatever. But that seems to be like their number one sales avenue and where they end up getting the majority of their sales. Or, let's say someone is really trying to get into retail stores and they're spending all this time getting in retail stores, but they have a really easy time converting sales on their website, but they're not focused on that because they have this idea that they want to be in stores and they're focusing on something that's not working. So think about what has worked. I want you guys to take out a pen and paper maybe right now and write down where you've had your best sales in the past and brainstorm, think about how you can expand that in the future. So kind of tying this into the right clients, right sales avenues, some of the ways to fix this or to test solutions that work for you, as I mentioned. If something works, keep moving in that direction and keep building. And then there's a way to sort of funnel people into other directions when you want to do that. So don't try to do every different sales avenue at once. This is going to spread you so thin. And don't try to market to everyone. It's never going to work. Trying to sell to everyone is like selling to no one, and it's going to really do you a huge disservice. Think about how your dream clients are buying. Laser targeted dream client avatars are really important to identify. Having a super broad target market might be good for certain things, but it's not going to be really good at figuring out where your dream clients are buying. And that's the most important thing. Where do they shop? What influences their purchasing decisions? And then once you do that, and you can start thinking about really identifying who they are. And once you figure out who you are, you got to really find out where they're hanging out. And then make sure that your branding and messaging and your pricing and designs are perfectly aligned with their values and what they find, what they hold, true in their hearts for what they want to not only purchase, but also their lifestyle, their fashion sense, all of those things. Because those are super important things to consider and to remember, because a lot of times we just heard people just create these avatars that are just out of the blue, and it's not really in alignment with who their real avatar is, or they're not really clear on what their messaging is. So you got to get super clear on who your dream client is. Very important for growing this. And then one thing that I think people are really hesitant to do is to start with themselves, because a lot of times when we start designing jewelry or creating things, we've started because we started creating jewelry that we like to wear, right? So, that's how I started. I loved working with my hands. I started making things that I liked, and I started wearing it and getting compliments from people who were like me, and they started wearing it. So don't forget that you are a huge research project in most cases, maybe not in every case, for your dream client. So if you're designing things for you in a way that you love to wear, who are other people like you, and what are your shopping habits? I think a lot of people say, oh yeah, my dream client is like me, but with just a lot more money. So where are those people hanging out? Think about it that way. All right, killer number 4. We already got killer number 3. That's right clients and the right sales avenues, is that you need help building confidence and overcoming a fear of sales. So this is really all about what's in your head, which I think is really, really important, and the number one thing that a lot of us need to overcome, because the fear of putting yourself out there or the anxiety of people saying no is very powerful and can be very debilitating in having you move forward in your sales success strategies. So there are a lot of things that can sort of combat this sort of headspace or negative headspace or mindset, that we teach designers in the Flourish and Thrive community all the time. And it's actually part of our first module in our Laying the Foundation course. But it's really important, and that's that mindset piece. So one of the things that you can do, or several other things that you can do to sort of counteract that, is to start, by identifying what it is that you're really afraid of. Is it really that it's fear, or is it something more? Because it quite possibly could be that you're just excited about putting yourself out there, but it feels like fear. I used to feel that way when I would pick up the phone and have to actually call people to get appointments to show my collection, drive down to the store, show my collection in their store, and get an appointment. So you can do daily confidence rituals that help pump you up. Some of those confidence rituals might be stating affirmations about what it is that you want. It might be meditation. It might be journaling, creating a gratitude list, all those sort of things. And next week we have a great episode with Sabina Hitchen from Sabina Knows. And I'm really excited because she gives us a strategy about keeping a journal about all of your fears as it relates to sales and confidence. So you can write all those down and then like start to identify like what is it that's really the root of this problem and start to like counteract it. So, start to document, the things that are overwhelming you or holding you back from sales. And remember that no is just a word. It really doesn't mean anything. And no doesn't mean no that you suck as a designer and that you aren't good enough. No just might mean no, it's not the right fit for my store. No, it's not the right fit for me now. No, I think your jewelry is lovely, but it's not really my sense of style. There's something for everyone out there. Don't think that, what you're doing is not in alignment. And no has, I've stated this statistic a few times, or this story, I've talked about this story a few times. I had a business mentor years and years ago. He's a coach named Dave Ellis, and I went to one of his workshops, probably 10 years ago or something. And this was my first foray into celebrating and understanding like how keeping a positive mindset really can affect like the outcome of so many situations. So what he told this story about how his dad was a door-to-door salesman, and he used to celebrate every no that he would get because he had calculated that it took 9 no's in order to get 1 yes. So you have a 1 out of 10 try oftentimes in a lot of cases for someone to say yes. And oftentimes it also takes like 7 to 10 touches for someone who is a prospect and interested in your brand to actually buy it. So no doesn't always mean no right now. And I think that 2 of the final things that I want to leave you with as far as this mindset piece and this like fear of sales, fear of putting yourself out there, is that sales is really not sleazy or slimy. It's really just a service. You're adding value. People need your jewelry. Think about it when you have someone who wears like the earrings that they bought from you every day. Why are they doing that? Is it just the style, or is it because it creates something, a story, an experience for them? You are adding value to their lives, and you have to remember that. So think of it in that way. Think of sales as a service. Like, how can you help your clients, feel more beautiful, feel more confident in who they are, look more stylish, make their life easy. One of the things that I do, and part of the reason why I'm able to convert a lot of engagement ring clients and a lot of jewelry projects with men, is because men don't like to work very hard, most of them. I mean, I had a few customers who were super involved, like with the back and forth in the process, but a lot of them just want a solution because it's not their forte, especially guys. They're not like super into like, the design piece and stuff like that. They just want to know like, okay, what should I buy? Tell me what to buy. Or tell me, let's work off a few ideas and then give me the solution. And I do that all the time for my male clients who have wives that they want to buy gifts for. And it makes it so easy for them to make their wife happy. It also makes it easier for them to buy gifts. So think of it that way. Like, how can you be of service to your customers in out of the box thinking ways? Because like you really are helping them. And then finally, I think the biggest number one takeaway from sales killer number 4, this confidence and fear of no piece, is that you can combat this so easily by just taking one little baby step at a time. Take daily action towards whatever it is that scares you. My sister used to be the COO of my company when I had Tracy Matthews Designs. She was the operations person. And she used to have something on her computer that said, do something every day that scares you. And this is a really good tool because facing your fears and moving towards them and moving through them is what helps you grow as a business owner, is what helps you grow as a designer, and what really gets you to the next level in life in all respects. So do something that scares you every day. And if it's sales, I recommend that you do it 5 times a day. And then let's move on to sales killer number 5, because I know that I can talk for ages about this. I think it's really important, is that you don't have the time to make sales. I think this is probably an excuse that a lot of people have. Like, I don't have time to do it. Well, I hate to break it to you, but if you can't make the time to do it, then you don't really have a business, because you need to have sales actions in your business every day in order to grow that business. Now, it might be a little different if you're working a full-time job and you have a jewelry business on the side. You might not have daily time to slot into it. But the number one thing that you should be doing every day at the beginning of the day as your top priority is bringing revenue into your business. So that might look like a lot of different things to different people depending on your business model, because we talked about the sales avenues. Like, one person might be selling wholesale, One person might be, having a retail store. One person might be doing trunk shows and live events. Another person might be selling online. But if you aren't doing things every day to promote sales in your business and you're not making time for that, then you got a problem. That needs to be your number one priority, and that something else needs to shift, because this is the most important thing that you're gonna do. So a couple fixes for making the time to actually do sales is to time block a couple of hours every single day, first thing in the morning. And, I like using Fridays as my days to catch up on businessy stuff or like collection development and things that are time consuming, because Friday's probably the worst day to reach out for sales for just about anyone, unless you're in the middle of a project and corresponding with someone already. Friday is probably one of the worst days if you're talking about weekdays. So Monday through Thursday, you should have several hours in the morning focused on sales activity by time blocking. Now you want to then follow that up by prioritizing the most important revenue generating activities first. So the things that are going to be the most highly leveraged, that are going to bring the most money into your business. So I talked about this before, but doing your sales first, I just want to reiterate this and drive it home, is the most important thing that you can do every single day. If you can't prioritize sales, then you don't have a business. It has to be your number one thing. The next thing is to work on the activities that actually are going to generate sales, like writing email newsletters or making phone calls or writing emails directly to customers or reaching out. For some of you, it might be writing a blog post that's going to pick up SEO, that's going to drive traffic to your site. All these things are all interconnected, and sometimes with online businesses, the marketing piece is really directly related to the sales piece. So you have to remember that way. And then just make sure that you're focused every day on activities that are going to generate sales and bring more sales into your business. So I hope that helped you. I wanted to go over the killers one more time, the 5 sales killers. Killer number 1 is I don't have enough exposure. Killer number 2 is my online activity isn't converting into sales. Killer number 3 is I am not finding the right clients or the right sales avenues. Killer number 4 is I need help building confidence and overcoming my fear of sales. And killer number 5 is I don't have the time to actually make sales. So I wanted to help you out. I know there's been a lot of information in this podcast. So we've created a very special download for you today to help you kind of reevaluate and check in with yourself, because for some of you, it might not just be one sales killer. It could quite possibly be all of the sales killers or a couple of the sales killers. So I created this guide so you can have a quick reference when you're feeling, overwhelmed or fearful to put yourself out there, of things that you can do, or reminders of things that we spoke about in this podcast that you can do to actually make more sales. So you can go grab that over on the show notes over at flourishthriveacademy.com/episode 51. I have a direct URL that you can grab it there and download it as well. Opt in and download this specific sales guide. It's called, you can go to flourishthriveacademy.com, make more sales. That's flourishthriveacademy.com, make more sales. And, I know that a lot of you are struggling with sales, and probably some of your friends are too. And, we really want to help as many people as possible. And that's why we're going to be coming up in a couple of weeks. Keep your eyes open. You definitely want to make sure that you download that guide for a sort of mini course that we're creating that you're going to have access to, where we're going to give you some strategies to kind of overcome some of these sales killers and actually put actionable strategies into your day so that you can make more sales. So download that guide over at flourishthriveacademy.com/make more sales. Keep your eyes open for our mini sales course that we're going to be coming up with. More is going to be revealed in the coming weeks. Don't want to spill the beans yet, but it's coming up real soon. And then I also wanted to ask you a huge favor. If you know people who are struggling with sales, make sure that you share this episode with them, because we really want to help as many people as possible, as I mentioned. And if you have friends struggling with sales, other designers and makers who are having a difficult time really growing their business, they might really benefit from this content too. So please, 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 whatever you do, share it with them. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast over at Thrive by Design on iTunes. And you can also give us a little rating and review so we know how we're doing. Anyway, thank you so much for listening today. I really, really hope that this helps you with overcoming some of these sales killers that you're experiencing, and that it really gives you a huge impact so that you can make more momentum and build your business on your terms, so that you have a business that you love, that is really supporting your passion for jewelry design and also supporting the lifestyle that you desire. Thanks so much for listening today, and I'm really looking forward to sharing more information with you and sharing more stories with you on future episodes of the podcast. So thanks again for listening, and have an awesome day.